she was younger, but I believe he probably had his own house or his own, his own home.
It says go to his house.
Yeah, so he had his own house. So King David doesn't think twice about sending his daughter there. And, there's a lot of questioning of, was he unaware? Did he care? Why wasn't he more protective of his daughter? She gets there. He gets her into the room and he starts to attack her, and she begs him not to. And she even says, maybe we can get married, which some scholars said, yes, there was royal marriage, but most of them say it was a ploy. She was doing anything to try to keep him at bay. He didn't care. He raped her. And then it says now he hated her as much as he had loved her. And so her clothes are all ripped or whatever. He cast her into the street. And princesses had special clothing, special gowns, tunics, whatever. And her hair was all disheveled. She was distraught. And people saw that, she had been raped or dishonored. And now Tamar had a full brother. Amnon was a half brother. They had different mothers. Absalom. And Absalom was second in line to be king. So Absalom, her brother, finds her and takes her home and says, don't say anything. Let's see what happens. But King David, their father, does nothing. Doesn't do anything. There are no repercussions for Amnon because King David has a softness or a soft spot for his children. And, I was reading Jonathan Kirsch, this great book about David. And he said, perhaps Amnon got this idea that he could take women the way he wanted from his father, because who took Bathsheba and who had taken other women, and who, there was this idea. And though he really crossed the line when he, raped his own sister. So Absalom doesn't do, waits for his father to do anything. And 2 years pass. And finally, and they say, and Tamar was desolate, her life was ruined. We know that Absalom, when he married, he had a beautiful little girl, and he named her Tamar after his sister. And they also talk about how Absalom, I imagine Tamar too, were stunningly beautiful and gorgeous. They actually say he was beautiful from the tip of his head to the bottom of his toe. He was so handsome. And they said that he had this luxuriant hair that weighed, I can't remember how many shekels, but Jonathan Kirsch said it meant 2 or 3 pounds. His hair was so thick and, was long and beautiful, so he was a stunning figure. Anyway, he decides to take action. And so there's a sheep shearing festival. And the word is mishteh, as Penina will tell you, means you do a lot of drinking, from lishtot, which means to drink. So it was a big Oktoberfest, but with wine and, all kinds of spirits and a party. And he says, send my brother, Amnon to my sheep shearing. And Jonathan Kirsch suggests that King David was like, maybe not. Maybe he hasn't really gotten over it yet. I'm not sure. He says, send everybody. I'm going to have a big party. Send all my brothers. Send everyone. So I don't know. It never really says how many sons he had. I would be curious. I would say at least 20 sons, or I would imagine. But he had sons. And Absalom says to his men, because he's also, quite older, and maybe 30 at this point, or 20s, 30. When I say the word, kill my brother Amnon, when I say the word. So they look at him like, what? And he says, don't worry, it'll be on me. Do what I say. And so they're all there and they're drinking, and he gives Amnon drinks or whatever. And then he says, kill him. And all his men, his henchmen, his followers stab Amnon. Well, there's a riot. All the other brothers are terrified, and they all go running off. And somebody makes it to King David in Jerusalem first, a messenger, and says, a terrible thing. He says, all your sons were killed. All your sons were killed. And King David starts wailing and tearing his clothes and he's whatever. And then actually, I can't think of his name. I'd have to look at the text. The cousin, the same one who had, helped orchestrate the rape of Tamar says, I don't think so. I think he probably just killed Amnon. Your other sons are going to be okay. He was very cool. And sure enough, all the sons start appearing. He sees like a cloud in the distance of people, horses, I don't know, donkeys, whatever, coming toward him. And it turned out he only killed Amnon. So, of course, Absalom ran away. This is all the stuff we read already. Does anybody remember where he went to? No. Okay. That's why I'm reviewing.
Gesher.
Gesher. And why did he go to Gesher?
His father-in-law.
His grandfather.
Oh.
His grandfather. So his mother was Maacah, and she was the daughter of the king of Gesher. And again, that shows you how David married daughters of neighboring kingdoms to create alliances. That's how women were used. So he ran to his grandfather and stayed with him and hid out there, which was, like a border country of Israel. He stayed there for 3 years and he was afraid to come back. And then his King David's, I was reading it, Jonathan Kerr said, he was like, his top mafioso is what he called Joab, his top mafioso, who this is the guy that he did everything. He was his henchman and he grew up with him. But if you remember when David wanted to get Bathsheba's husband killed at the front, he sent the message to Joab, put this guy in the front lines. You know what I mean? So this was his top mafioso, so to speak. And and David was depressed because his son and he were estranged. He was depressed. He was moping. He wasn't, himself, and he couldn't take it anymore. So does anybody remember what he did? It has to do with a woman, of course. Anybody remember?
With Bathsheba, you mean?
No.
Oh.
He sent this woman, she's called the woman of Tekoa, and she comes to him and she says, oh, your majesty, I have a terrible plight. You must help me. I have 2 sons, and one son was in a feud and killed my other son. And now the courts want to kill the remaining son as a, punishment. And then I'll have no one to carry on my name. I'll have no sons left. It'll be terrible for my family. And David is very sympathetic. And this kind of reminds us of it's a parallel of the story about the lamb. If you remember with Bathsheba, where Nathan came to him and said, there was a guy who only had one little ewe lamb that he loved and another man with lots of sheep. And then the rich man had to make a feast and he took the ewe lamb and he used him instead. And David said, this man should be punished. And he said, well, it's you. That's what you did to Bathsheba.
May I interrupt for 1 second? Because I remember this part so well. Because Natan says to David, Atahaish.
You are the man.
And those 2 words in Hebrew, Atahaish, you are the man, have stayed with me for so many years. And I really do appreciate your telling the story now, Susan.
Yes. So it's a similar thing. So the woman says, he says, no one's going to kill your second son. I'm going to protect him. Don't worry. And she says, well, may I ask you, why were you doing the same thing? Why are you, have a bounty or a taboo on your son? Aren't you the example for all of us? And does anybody remember what King David says to her? Okay. He says, did Joab send you and put you up to this? And she says, yes. He told me every word to say. Joab, you're right. Like he saw this. He saw the ploy. And so then he says, okay, Absalom, you can come back to Israel, to Judea, to Jerusalem. But I don't want to see you. So now he's there, and another 2 or 3 years pass. I can't remember the text, and he still hasn't seen his father. So Avshalom is very frustrated. Oh, it was another 2 years, because it was a total of 7 years now since Tamar was raped. And it's been all this time. And so Avshalom calls Joab, sends a message, come and I need you to, help me make peace with my father. And Joab doesn't answer. And he sends him another message, come and talk to me. I want to talk about trying to, reconcile. No answer. Does anybody remember what he did?
He killed him.
No, he did not kill him. He
Oh,
said
he
to his
didn't?
servant, go to his field and set his field on fire. Set his field on fire. And then Joab came. Why did you set my field on fire? Because you wouldn't come to me. I want you to go to my father. So finally, he went to his father. He went to David and he said, okay, enough already. And David had gotten over, Amnon at this point, and he said, all right. And so Amnon came and they reconciled. So then time passes. And if we remember, I thought and David, it said 40 years, but Jonathan Kirsch says now Absalom was 40. He was 40. That's what the 40 was about. He was 40 years old. And I mean, I could now, we read this, but do you want to now read it again, or do you want me to keep telling? What would you prefer?
Read it again, too.
What'd you say?
Good.
So how old is David at this point?
David must have been 65, let's say.
Goes on forever. Okay.
You don't mind? I'd like us to read it, but I don't know what the other group how the other group
You want me
feels.
to tell, or you want to read the text? What would you prefer till we get to where we left off?
I like your narrative.
Keep,
It's really
keep telling
exciting.
it.
I'm like on a cliffhanger.
Okay, so now
Right.
Avshalom is 40. He, is, I think of King Charles. How long till I,
Right.
my parent is living forever. I want to be king. I've been a prince for, my 40 years. And so what he does is he gets himself a chariot and 50 men, and he starts going around Jerusalem looking very regal in his chariot. And he hangs out at the front gates where people would come from all over the land, and you would go and you would go to the king and ask him to resolve certain issues, certain legal issues, certain moral issues, whatever. And people would come and go before King David, and Absalom would stand there and go, oh, who are you going to see? King David. Wow, he's not really very good at this. If I were king, I know that I would rule in your favor. If I were king, I would really help you. But unfortunately, I'm not the king. We got the old guy up there, and so good luck. And basically, he was bad-mouthing his father, and he was winning a following. Don't forget also, he was stunningly handsome, King David had been good looking, but not like this. And he was very friendly, very warm. You felt like, Brad Pitt or the most beautiful, no, because I think of him as having being Warren Beatty in his prime, coming and talking to you and, or I don't know, Cary Grant or somebody, like, oh my God, it's the prince. And I love him, because he gives you attention and whatever. And he gained a following. And then he finally staged a coup. And here was the coup. He said to his father, oh, let me go to Hebron and make a sacrifice. Now, Hebron, there was no temple. Remember this yet, because his son Solomon built the temple. So there were these sanctuaries, different sanctuaries in different key cities where priests were there and they helped you sacrificed and whatever, but it wasn't like only one big temple. And one of them was in Hebron, which is, a city now on the West Bank. And let me go to Hebron and make a sacrifice, because when I was with my grandfather and I was in, over there, Geshur, I made a vow that if we ever came back, and I never did it. So his father says, yes, go. And he invites 300 of the elite to join him from the city. 300 of the elite, the top people, and they think they're just going with him to sacrifice. But then when he gets there, he has also another following of soldiers, and he has a private army. And he says, now when I blow the shofar, everybody say, long live King Avshalom. Then this is the signal that I'm now king. And the 300 who went were totally taken by surprise, but it looked like they backed him because they were there for the declaration. And that was, I mean, the machinations were unbelievable. So that's as far as we got, where he, pretty far. I want to read the other part again. Avshalom declared himself king. And these would be like you invited the entire Congress to the party, to this thing, and then you declared yourself king, and the whole Congress is there. It looks like the whole Congress is supporting you, but they weren't, but now they were there. Okay, so now we see this intrigue, and I'm going to put up the text. Okay, hold on. I have to do share first. Wait, stop. Share screen. Share screen. Okay, and let me get to where we were, because I was reading the whole thing. I was rereading the whole thing so that I would remember myself. Hold on, stop. Okay, and hold on. I do think we went a little further, but I want to go back to this part. Sorry, it's not very, I can do it faster. Okay, here it is. Oh, it was 200 men. Here, 200 men of Jerusalem accompanied Absalom, and they invited and went in good faith, suspecting nothing. And Absalom sent to fetch Achitophel of Gilead. Okay, David's counselor. Achitophel was like Achitophel. Achitophel was like a brilliant wise man that everyone listened to. He was like the sage of the country, and so he Achitophel actually abdicated, deserted David and became Avshalom's counselor. The conspiracy gained strength, and the people supported Avshalom in increasing numbers. And then someone came to David and said, the loyalty of the men of Israel has veered toward Avshalom. Okay, so whereupon David said to all his courtiers, okay, this is where we left off. Let us flee at once, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must get away quickly, or he will soon overtake us and bring down disaster upon us and put the city to sword. So David's response to the coup, and this is interesting, and there's a question of why, was to flee. He didn't think he didn't want to fight in the city. There'd be a lot of, destruction, but he also was so surprised, and some say, he was feeling old, he was feeling frightened, and he said, let's go. And so, okay, so here we are. The king's courtier said to the king. So who would like to read? Okay, Lori.
The king's courtier said to the king, whatever our lord the king decides, your servants are ready. So the king left, followed by his entire household, except for 10 concubines, whom the king left to mind the palace.
Keep going.
The king left, followed by all the people, and they stopped at the last house. All his followers marched past him, including the Cherethites and the Pelethites and all the Gittites. 600 men who had accompanied him from Gath also marched by the king.
Okay, so Jonathan Kirsch, I was reading about this. Remember when he was in Gath and he was a loyal, sort of a renegade, and he was hiding in Gath, and he was actually attacking other countries and giving the spoils to the king of Gath. Maybe you don't remember this, but Jonathan Kirsch says, why do we hear these names? Cherethites, Pelethites, Gittites. They were not Israelites. This was his private mercenary army. they were paid by him and they were loyal to him. He didn't, because the king, Jonathan suggests that he didn't know who was loyal among the Israelites and who were loyal to Absalom. He wasn't sure. So yes, he brought some of his own Israelite soldiers, but he brought his personal 600 that he had been, had for years, mercenaries that were his private army that he knew were loyal to him only. Okay. However, there was one guy, Ittai. I'll read this, Lori. Go ahead.
And the king said to Ittai the Gittite, why should you too go with us? Go back and stay with the new king, for you are a foreigner and you are also an exile from your country. You came only yesterday. Should I make you wander about with us today when I myself must go wherever I can? Go back and take your kinsman with you in true faithfulness. Ittai replied to the king, as the Lord lives and as the Lord my God the king lives, wherever my Lord the king may be, there your servant will be, whether for death or for life.
Okay. So I think Ittai becomes an important person later. That's why he's mentioned, I'm pretty sure. But the king is also, still fair, still saying, if you're brand new to my court, I guess, you don't have to come with me. And he goes, no, David had a huge reputation. I mean, he'd been basically, he was 17, slew Goliath. Remember who this guy is. He's like, even though he's very loose in his morality with women, as a warrior and as a king, he was quite successful. Okay, who would like to read? Abby, you want to read? And David's
Okay. And David said to Ittai, then march by, and Ittai the Gittite and all of his men and all the children who were with him marched by.
So I guess when you marched at war, you took your women and children with you, which is interesting. You didn't leave them behind.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. The whole countryside wept aloud as the troops marched by. The king crossed the Kidron Valley and all the troops crossed by the road to the wilderness.
Okay, why do you think they wept?
Why do you think they what?
Cried. Why did they cry, do you think? Does anybody have an idea?
Wept aloud as a troop. Well, because they thought they might be killed.
Or their king was leaving. He was being defeated, their beloved
Oh, yeah.
on the run.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think they thought they'd be killed, but they loved him and he was, leaving. I'm trying to think of.
But weren't these the people that were on Absalom's side or no?
No, not these people.
Oh, okay.
This is like, the countryside as he marched through and he crossed the Kidron Valley and they went into the Judean desert. Okay.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. Then Zadok appeared with all the Levites carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God, and they set down the Ark of God until all the people had finished marching out of the city. Abiathar also came up.
Okay, so Abiathar and Zadok are the two priests of the sanctuary in Jerusalem. So, and that's where the ark, the ark came. So we know they still had it. It wasn't taken away as we believe until this destruction of the first temple. Okay, so let's read this and then go ahead.
Okay.
Next two paragraphs.
Okay, but the king said to Zadok, take the ark of God back to the city. If I find favor with the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see it and its abode. And if he should say, I do not want you, I am ready, let him do with me as he pleases.
Okay, let's stop for a minute. What is this mentality of David at this point in his life? And had we seen it before, this kind of mentality of what will be, and I have to accept whatever happens? Does anybody remember another time when he was like that?
Maybe when one child died?
When his child died, remember he fasted and prayed while the child was alive. And when the child died, he says, well, now he's dead. There's nothing I can do. And there seems to be this fatalism with David, what God, it's God's will. And what will be, and don't take the ark. And Why did he say, don't take the ark, do you think?
He
Why
may
would
never
you,
see it again.
I'm sorry, what?
Would he not ever see it again?
But he said, don't take it with you, with me. Don't bring.
Oh,
He said,
right.
don't bring it. Here's him, his two high priests with the ark saying, okay, let's go. And, you know, they had used the ark in battle in the past, but what do you think he was thinking this time?
Well,
Abby?
Well, I maybe I'm wrong, but I sort of remember that he was afraid that the ark was going to be captured by the enemy. So he didn't keep the ark with him.
I think that's it. And also, it's too precious to be carrying around on the run. I think also, I mean, and also maybe this ambivalence. If my son ends up being king and this is the end for me, I want him to have the ark. You know what I mean? As opposed to I want to win at all costs. It seems like he's tired and he is running and he is going, he does rally, but he's exhausted, it seems. Okay, so yes, Penina.
Okay, I have a feeling that there is also a religious motif here floating among these whole happenings back and forth. First of all, there was, yes, the ark is to be close to, so it's a concern that the person be next to it to continue the same belief and the same tradition that he himself was carrying. So David, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so that concern that the other person should continue. And the fact that there was a little bit of paganism in this whole business with Amnon and Tamar.
Right.
Because the pharaohs married their sisters.
Right.
And we really didn't see that happening among the Hebrews a lot. And especially the rape thing, the sex thing, was definitely a pagan behavior or habit that was going on with the nations around. So I think the concern to maintain this religion and the responsibility that he took on himself of choosing Jerusalem and buying it to be the center. So he has this feeling, or I would say, responsibility that he took on himself to actually be close to this whole idea of monotheism, of the God that he believes in. And he's concerned, you see there, like this feeling of push me, pull me. Certain things you weren't supposed to do, so somebody reacts to it. Some things that's supposed to be done, so they're being mentioned. So that will be a positive notion toward, or gesture toward this thing of the new religion. So being next to the other nations, we see the influence and all this stuff that it's like, still like it's sprinkled here and there. And we're supposed to pick it up or not, but I think it's there.
I think you're right. I also think maybe he was worried that without the ark in Jerusalem, people could sway more to pagan ways.
And that's why he bought Jerusalem. He wanted that to be the center because he cared. That's one thing. With all his up and down behavior, he still cared. So that's something that's, I think, worth to be noted.
I agree with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, what happened here? Hold on. Wait, where's the share? You are screen sharing. Okay, wait a minute.
You went back to the...
I know, I don't understand. Oh. Hold on. Oh, God. Stop share. Let's just do this.
There we go.
Start again. Share screen. Oh, I didn't do that. Okay. So they take the ark back. Now.
And I wanted to add one more thing before we finished, that he went back, Avshalom ran to Hebron. Hebron was the place where Sarah had her tent. She was a princess and she had a place of her own.
That's
so
right.
Then he goes back not only to somebody's father-in-law, he's going back to his grandma. kind of like, you know what I mean? Like the
Yes,
place of
going
where
back
it all,
To
yeah,
the source, to the source.
yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted, this is a lot of military stuff, and I want to get to the personal stuff, but what's interesting is they go back to Jerusalem, and he goes to the Mount of Olives, and he's weeping, and he's crying, and he's walking barefoot, so he's in a lot of grief. Okay, so now this is the plot. That part is interesting. Okay, so wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, now he knows that Achitophel, that we talked about, his most wisest counselor, was among the conspirators, and he said, oh God, frustrate Achitophel's counsel. So now he, okay, wait, I want to get, wait, hold on. So now Hushai the Archite comes to him and he says, this is what I want you to do. So somebody read here, because this is part of the plot. Who wants to read? Leslie, you want to read?
I'm charging my mouse.
David
Okay.
said to him.
David said to him, if you march on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you go back to this city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king. I was your father's servant formerly, and now I will be yours. Then you can nullify, I can't pronounce it, counsel for,
Achitophel's counsel.
okay?
Okay, what's his plot? What's his plot? What's the plot? Do you understand what he said? He said, go back to Avshalom, offer to be another wise counselor and supporter, but basically I want you to thwart Achitophel's advice, because Achitophel is the wisest man in the land. And Achitophel is going to give him really good advice. And I want you there to be like a double agent to discourage Avshalom from listening to Achitophel, because with Achitophel, he could win if he listens to him, because he's so brilliant. So I want you to nullify Achitophel's counsel for me. Go there and declare yourself loyal to Avshalom, but really you're working for me. And thwart this and make sure that he doesn't follow Achitophel. And Zadok and Abiathar, the two high priests, will be there, because I'm sending them back with the ark. And whatever you hear, tell Zadok and Abiathar. Listen to this. This is like John le Carré novel. And their two sons, Ahimaaz and Abiatar's son Jonathan, will come and tell me. So here's the plot.
Jeez.
I know. He says, okay, Hushai, you're in the palace. You thwart whatever Achitophel says, but you tell me their plans. You tell them to the priests, because you can pretend you're making a sacrifice. The priests will tell them to their sons. They each have a son. And the sons will run to me in the encampment and tell me what's going on. So that's the plot.
Do you know what the word Achitophel means?
Now,
Brother of hell.
what does it mean?
A brother of hell.
A brother of hell? Oh, Tophel.
Brother
Right.
to
My
hell, or
brother.
brother of hell. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay, and then there's another subplot. I mean, this is like unbelievable what's going on, because besides Avshalom trying to get the throne, there's somebody else who wants the throne. The last living son of King Saul, the king before David, is still around. The last living son, who David has been, I think he was lame. He had like a limp. But David, kept him alive, and he was feeding him and taking care of him. But now he hates him, and he would like to be king too. So there's like two rebel groups trying to overthrow King David. This is like a movie. This is like
Yes.
a movie. Okay. And who comes? Who read here? Who is reading? Leslie, go ahead.
David had passed a little beyond the summit when Ziba, the servant of
Okay. Mephibosheth, that is Saul's last son.
Okay.
Mephibosheth, that's his last living son. Okay.
When he came toward him with a pair of saddled asses carrying 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisin, 100 cakes of figs, and a jar of wine.
Okay, we see what they liked to eat in the old days.
The king,
And all this is homegrown.
Yeah, go ahead.
the king asked Ziba, "What are you doing with these?" Ziba answered, "The asses are for your majesty's family to ride on, the bread and figs are for the attendants to eat, and the wine is to be drunk by any who are exhausted in the wilderness." "And where is your master's son?" the king asked. "He is staying in Jerusalem,"
Go
Ziba
ahead.
to the king, "for he thinks that the house of Israel will now give him back the throne of his grandfather."
Oh, okay.
So he's hanging out waiting for this.
So he was the son of Jonathan. I'm sorry. He was King Saul's grandson. So he was the son of Jonathan, who was, David's close friend. And when Jonathan died in battle, David said, "I will take care of your children," and whatever. And so he's been taking for him. But now he thinks, "Oh, I'm going to inherit." It was not his Saul's son, Saul's grandson. And so then the king, and basically what is Ziba saying? "I'm not with him. I'm with you because I'm giving you all this stuff." And so what does the king say, Leslie?
The king said to Ziba, "Then all that belongs to
Mephibosheth.
is now yours." And Ziba replies, "I bow low. Your majesty is most gracious to me."
Okay, so Ziba saw which side, his bread was buttered. And he said, "I am not rebelling against David." His master went to Jerusalem in the hopes that now maybe they would declare him king. Okay, now here comes, but David was, according to this, still hated by the family of Saul's followers, King Saul and whatever, his clan, because, Saul died, even though Saul was mentally ill and was paranoid and all that. And also, but Jonathan Kirsch suggests that even though it's not in the text, it's possible that David did have a lot of the clan killed. And just like they did, if you ever watched I, Claudius,
Yeah.
where they killed, everybody's killing everybody so that they won't inherit. There's a suggestion here because of what he says. Okay, so who has not read, who would like to read? Merle.
Okay, so where am I starting?
As King David.
Okay, as King David was approaching Baharim, a member of Saul's clan, a man named Shimei, son of Gera, came out from there, hurling insults as he came. He threw stones at David and all King David's courtiers, while all the troops and all the warriors were at his right and his left. And these are the insults that Shimei hurled. Get out, you criminal, you villain. The Lord is paying you back for all your crimes against the family of Saul, whose throne you seized. The Lord is handing over the throne to your son Absalom. You are in trouble because you are a criminal.
Okay,
Abishai,
so he hated him. He hated him, and he said, "You killed everyone." Okay.
Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, Why let that dead dog abuse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head." But, I mean, it just keeps getting better. But the king said, "What has this to do with you, your sons of Zeruiah? He is abusing me only because the Lord told him to abuse David. And who is to say, why did you do that?" We all study Torah, we all study Talmud, but you don't see any of this. You don't read any of this unless you take a class like this. Thank you for providing us with this movie material.
I have said before, I think that, the Tanakh, this part, the book of Samuel and this is all written by this group all the way through the book of Kings. Oh my God, Kings is unbelievable too, with all of this bloodshed and court intrigue. Was written by this, either one writer or a school of writers called the Deuteronomists. They wrote the book of Deuteronomy and they read all this history. And they are the most amazing writers. The color, I don't think it's anywhere else so much. A little bit in the book of writings in some of them. the inner life, the feelings, the thoughts. It's really incredibly alive, and it's like you're right, like a spy novel. It's incredibly rich. And
All this
according to Jonathan Kirsch, this part about David was being written pretty much while he was alive or right after he died. So they were there, or they knew about it, and they knew what was going on. Now, of course, the language, I'm sure, like any historical novel, you write really fantastic dialogue. Like this, let me cut his head off, this son of a dog. I mean, I love it. It's fantastic. Okay. And again, David says, if my son, my own issue, seeks to kill me, how much more the Benjaminite? That's where Saul was from, the tribe of Benjamin. Let him go on hurling abuse, for the Lord has told him to. And perhaps the Lord will look upon my punishment and recompense me for the abuse Shimei has uttered today. Again, there's this fatalism, this odd mentality that I have to believe was the way he was, because why would they portray him like that if he wasn't sort of that way, where he was this thing of like, let him, or maybe he felt guilty. Maybe, Nathan had said to him, because you took Bathsheba as your wife and you had her husband killed, your whole house is going to come falling down on you, and your things are going to happen. Your family's going to tear each other apart. And maybe he's seeing that this was his own doing in some way. But, or I don't know, why do you think he's so fatalistic? Do you have any sense of what, I mean, and do you ever feel that way, fatalistic, or do you feel like there's nothing I can do, this is life? I mean, yes, Abby, what do you?
Definitely. Well, I'm sort of reading along with what do you call it, Robert Alter, and it sounds like this Abishai has an impulse control problem. He wants to kill people on the spot. I mean, you're in this world, and these people you're trying to live honorably, and then you have all these people, conniving and all of that. So
look at our politics today.
Right. I think it is our world.
It's the same thing.
Right.
It is.
What's going on?
Absolutely.
I mean, in Texas and in Florida, it's like, I don't even know what country it is we're living in, particularly, right. and Montana. And so
even within families.
But I'm talking about particularly this idea of like, well, what will be. I'm not going to fight it anymore. If this is meant to be abused, or if this is what God wants for me. I think it has something to do with his exhaustion of being a king and fighting for so long. It's like, oh my God, I'm not sure. Yeah, Leslie, what do you think?
I mean, there's some fatalistic aspects to what he's saying. I'm not completely buying it, because I think he thinks he is, in a way, God, and all he does is kill everybody. Like, you talk badly about me, I don't care, I'm going to go kill you and everybody else you know.
David?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, everybody's dying everywhere, I mean, I asked you this once before, which is, why does I think he's so great?
I actually think he's very flawed, and I agree with you. But I don't see him as particularly bloodthirsty. He did kill the Uriah for sure, but I think he wants the best for his people, but his indulgence of his children and their excesses, and he doesn't seem to have, I look at all of our patriarchs were terrible family men. Abraham didn't really defend, and he let Sarah kick out Ishmael, and he was willing to sacrifice Isaac without a word. Isaac was quite weak and let Rebecca decide who was going to get the blessing. Jacob was horrible. He favored Joseph, which brought down the whole family and got them into Egypt. So it's like, when it comes to their children, they're very indulgent, and he also, with his sons, very indulgent. And I don't think there's any king in the Torah or any father that's particularly strict with their children that I can think of. Can anybody think of anyone?
I'm just thinking they give up too easily. they fight and they fight and they fight. And then somewhere there's something in their heads that say what, and that's kind of where it'll be.
As opposed to the women, if you look at Sarah, whether you agree with her or not, it's like this kid is a danger to Isaac. He has to go. Rebecca, no, you're not giving the birthright to Esau. No way. He's not the right one. It has to be Jacob.
Right.
Rachel, I find her interesting where she stole the household gods. I'm not leaving. We're leaving. We're going back. I'm taking my goddesses with me, my fertility goddesses. I have such a terrible trouble getting pregnant. And she still hadn't gotten pregnant, I don't think, at that point. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But she certainly had a lot of trouble. I'm taking my goddesses. The women, I actually have created a word for them a long time ago. They're actionists. They take
Yes.
action, and the men are kind of like, oh, what God says goes, or it's God's will, or whatever. I mean, I'm sure it's not all.
Behind every great man is a woman.
Well, you know what?
A strong woman.
You know what Rabbi Leader says? Behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes.
Yes. But that's kind of like what I was just thinking, that these women who aren't considered in reality, they're not considered of any value. They're just sort of there, that's why I think they're so strong and they fight back.
I don't think they're not considered value. I think they're extremely valuable biblically. I think whatever happened,
Yes,
biblically or whatever, but the women of the Bible and the whole Tanakh, Esther, Ruth, Song of Songs, Deborah, come on.
I think we believe they are, but then I think the men had a different.
Some men.
Right.
I mean, Yael, come on, Yael, she put the stake through. I mean,
And she wasn't even Jewish. She
wasn't even Jewish.
That's right.
For the people.
Yeah, but you guys, you have to pay attention. You're considered a Jew if your mother was Jewish. The mother. If your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish.
No, it was patriarchal at that time.
Yeah,
At that time. But what I'm telling you, they're not that weak. Never.
No, they're not this weak.
It wouldn't evolve that way, that you are Jewish if your mom is Jewish.
Right, but that was, well, whatever. But at that time it was patriarchal, but it's not even about, also, this sort of goes to Penina's theme this year. The women, well, it's an interesting theme, Penina. I appreciate it. The women in the ancient world around Israel they were goddesses and they were priestesses and they were oracles. Think of the Oracle of Delphi. So there was a mystical religious power, and there were goddesses in the pantheon of every other religion. And so women were in the ancient world were not just some women. I mean, obviously there were slaves and there were, I think once you became a wife, a lot of times you didn't have power, but our biblical women sort of embody the whole ancient world image of the powerful goddess. Yes, Abby.
And also a lot of times, the kings would then marry women of the other, things to, help with the political and, keep the power. So women were very important in the Bible.
Okay. I want to jump to this because I want Leslie to freak out because she's going to love this so much. She's going to be so pissed off that I have to have her do this because let's just get to, David's up there, blah, blah, blah. But Absalom and the men of Israel arrive in Jerusalem together with Ahitophel. Don't forget, Ahitophel is the wise guy. Okay. So Hushai shows up, the guy who says, this is the double agent. Hushai, the Archite, David's friend, came before Absalom. Okay, Leslie, read here.
Okay, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came before Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king, long live the king." But Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" Not at all, Hushai replied. I am for the one whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen, and I will stay with him. Furthermore, whom should I serve if not David's son? As I was in your father's service, so I will be in yours.
Don't forget, this is all a lie. He's the double agent, but he sent it. Okay, Leslie, go on.
Absalom then said to the guy I will never pronounce,
The wise guy, the wise man.
the
Yeah.
wise man. Absalom then said to the wise man, what do you advise us to do? And the wise man said to Absalom, have intercourse with your father's concubines, whom he left to mind the palace. And when all Israel hears that you have dared the wrath of your father, all who support you will be encouraged. So he wants them to just go have a good time. Just
Wait, finish.
trying to go away. Sorry. Okay, so they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom lay with his father's concubines with the full knowledge of all Israel. In those days,
Okay, so basically it's like go on the tent, go on the roof, and have sex in public with your father's 10 concubines. So these women were led one by one into the tent. I don't think it was an enclosed tent. I think it was probably an open tent, and they saw him basically raping these women one after another, all 10 women. Now, who was on a roof and saw a woman and then took her to himself? Remember, David was, it's the same roof that David saw Bathsheba on. It's the same roof. And so what does it say about sleeping with your father's women? What is that a symbol of?
Taking power.
Disrespect.
the prior crime, if you will, the prior rape, right?
The ultimate betrayal.
Well,
Disrespect.
also saying what? I take my father's place.
Right.
Right.
These women
Isn't
belong.
that common though? Wasn't that sort of common that each time somebody died that they would sleep with the concubines, the women of the kings of who was before? No?
I don't
But
know.
David's not dead.
I never
Sort
heard
of
of it.
remember, well, I don't know. I'll have to look.
Wait, Sue, Asa, do you have your hand up? No. Okay. Did you have something to say?
I just said that it's sort of power. You're kind of thumbing your nose at your father saying, I should, you're saying two things. One, I should replace you.
I am replacing you.
Yeah, because I can, and also, look, I can take your concubine and conquer her and have power. I think it's all about power.
It is
It's
power.
power.
And does anybody, I'm sure Penina remembers, who did that in the Torah? Who did that to Jacob?
Abraham. Pharaoh wanted him to give Sarah away to
Abraham,
him.
yes.
I mean, he
Pharaoh
wanted
took,
Sarah.
but he thought he
And
lost.
then again, it happened with Isaac and Rebecca.
But they
It happened
lied,
again with Isaac and Rebecca that Pharaoh wanted,
but they lied and said it was their sister, remember? However,
whatever.
maybe you
but
remember
still-
Reuben took Bilhah, which was one of the 4 wives of Jacob, and slept with her. After he slept with her, after who died? Rachel. Rachel died, and then Reuben slept with Bilhah, and that was a big scandal. And why did he do that? And there's lots of different things. But again, he was the oldest son saying, all right, it's time for me to be the leader. It's like women were used as just property on some level. You had standing as a widow, you might have had standing as a queen or whatever, but Bilhah was a servant girl, one of Jacob's servant wives. And we read about this last year, and he took her and slept with her. So this idea that you abase or abuse not the actual person, but their women, or also why did God kill the baby of Bathsheba and David? That was David's punishment. The baby died. So there's this weird idea of retribution by humiliating or striking down those around you that are dear to you. And then why did David leave these 10 women? There's a question, did he abandon them, or did he say take care of them? Were they servants or whatever? So I think it's a great place to end.
They were all property anyway, just want to say.
They're all
I mean,
property. And
10
that's,
concubines, imagine that.
imagine, And next week, in 2 weeks, we're going to read about how Absalom dies. Absalom is brought down, and that's kind of like the end of this huge saga. But does anybody know, even though we're going to read it next time, does anybody know what happens? Penina.
He's running away and his hair gets caught in a tree, and
His
then,
hair brings him down.
If somehow,
We'll read
So
about
was
it.
that his vanity
his
bringing him
hair
down?
His vanity, it's
he
more
gets
than
caught and he dies because his neck is broken.
it's more than that. It's more
The horse is going very fast
it's
and
more
he gets caught in the
Shakespearean.
brush. Yeah.
It's more Shakespearean, but
Now, I think he doesn't die that way. I think I forget which one of David's
Runs after
guys
him, yes.
takes him down from the tree while he's still alive, and
Oh.
then cuts him dead with the sword.
Could be.
He hangs on the oak. He
It's
hangs on the oak.
Yes.
but
Yeah.
if you were going to guess who was going to be the murderer of Absalom, who would it be? The chief mafioso.
That's right. Yoav.
Yoav. It was Yoav who did that. And then he brings it to David. Yeah, and David says, "Beni, Beni."
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
I know, he but it's like Luca Brasi.
Yeah, right. The kiss of death.
It's like Luca Brasi. He said, send him. When
Well,
you
let's
have-
face it, let's face it, every crime writer, every mystery writer probably knows enough biblical history to get something out of this.
It's
This
great
was the
plot.
original story plot, the original plot lines for everything.
Absolutely. I have to run, everybody. So it was so
Okay,
nice.
bye. Toda rabba. Thank you.
Susan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Susan, I hope
Thank
things
you.
straighten
Hope
out.
everything goes well.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Especially take care.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
That was good.
Very good.
It reminds us of our Sunday. Gives us a little extra.
Yes. I will be there Sunday. Oh, she's gone.